Let's bring in Saleem Ali. He's a Blue and Gold Distinguished Professor of Energy and the Environment at the University of Delaware. So, Professor, first I want to get your reaction to China's efforts and recent climate announcements ahead of COP26.
Well, China has just issued a white paper which lays out the framework within the ecological civilization approach that the Chinese government has followed. And within that, the targets are very ambitious. As you've noted, there's the carbon neutrality target by 2060. There's also a target for carbon intensity to be reduced by 65% by 2030 from 2005 levels. So that's a major goal to achieve. The cost is going to be considerable over the next 20 years or so. It's estimated to be in the trillions of dollars, but it could also create green jobs, and that's what China is hoping for.
I want to ask you about a section in that white paper about global governance when it comes to climate. What do you make of that?
Yes, so China has always claimed that it is still a developing country, and under the UN framework for treaties, environmental treaties, there are different standards for developing countries and developed countries. And the governance framework China is referring to is a way by which there is accommodation for this differentiation. Now, there are critics who would say that China's growth now and its wealth indicate that it has some features of a developed country. And so that has been a continuing tension in terms of the negotiations. And the breakdown in governance also comes down because there's no mechanism to enforce countries from keeping their commitments. So when you do not have any enforcement power of treaties, you can have commitments which are never met.
Speaking of commitments, what are your expectations for China and the rest of the countries attending COP26? Are you optimistic about the possible outcomes and commitments?
I would say I'm cautiously optimistic, but my concern remains that the commitments have to be now matched with action. And this is where, for example, there needs to be climate financing that has a direct interface with particular projects upfront. That's what would really convince the activists on the streets that this is not just going to be more talk and no action.
Well, what are the biggest challenges? Are they political? I mean, you have all these leaders gathering, speaking, whether in person or virtually, at this major summit. What are some things to keep in mind here?
There are several. For one thing, just the transition to green technologies will require a huge amount of materials and infrastructure investment. So where that's going to come from, because there has been a decision made in many countries not to use nuclear power for base load, they have to transition to wind and solar and hydro, and that's going to require massive infrastructure investments as well. And for that, they also need battery storage because you cannot have baseload power from wind and solar without massive battery storage. So that's going to be a major contention. The methane issue, which was noted in terms of reduction from fugitive emissions of natural gas, how that's going to be handled, that's a major issue because natural gas is being claimed as a transition for going from coal to other kinds of fuels. So there are going to be several aspects that will continue to be debated.
All right, a lot to watch in the days ahead. Professor Saleem Ali, thank you so much for joining us.